guys, and welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make fences and double fences, basically using block rotation, and very similar system to how the forge cables worked for my tutorial, only it's using block rotation in order to test. I had this already set up on CCTV Craft, so you get to kind of figure out how the script works, or at least something similar. So if we place the main block for the actual fence, you can see that it connects automatically, so we can do corners as well. This is automatically determined based on the block rotations. We can do T-sections and cross-sections as well. Those are all taken into consideration. And we can also place down fence gates, so there's a new block that will connect up fence gates, which you can walk through, or it will be blocked normally. All these have a tag for AI pathfinding for basically fence. This basically indicates that any entities that are inside of it will not try to escape. This is basically why the chicken is not escaping, even though that it's a single block. If we open the gate, he'll try to go through because it's technically an open block through AI pathfinding. He will eventually go through. I'll just leave that open while we test some other things. So basically, how double fences work is when the fence post is automatically placed down, it will place down another one when the player places the block. So this is done through basically the another procedure trigger, but most of the procedure triggers are configured. See, there we go, he came out. Are configured through the when block added. So it will test and update all the blocks on the four corners. So all four of those corners if we basically place one down, as well as the centerpiece. So that's why that basically works. It tests for a whole bunch of other conditions as well. But the fence gate is technically another block. There are three tags that are important in this particular procedure system, and that is for one to group all the fence gates together. There are two fence gates, one open, one closed. There is one for all the fence types, and one for all fence gates, and one and all fences as well. So there's quite a few different procedures, but most of them are run through all of the one script, which is when the block is added to the world. This can be done through either player block adding or also the block being added itself, but by like something like the set block command, it will still take that in consideration. There's also end pieces which connect like that as well. All right, so with that being said, let's go into MCreator, and I'll break down the fence properties of the blocks as first, and then we'll cover eventually the procedure system and stuff like that, and then we'll carry on to the fence gates and fence gate procedures, tags, and then finally I'll show you how to set up a double fence system, and then we'll test it again. So the example workspace has two folders, one called gates and one called fences. Basically, if we go into the gate or the fence one, we will start with looking at the block settings that we need to actually take a look in consideration. So we have the different blocks. There are a total of 6 different blocks. There's one for the fence post, which is called none, the end piece, the X corner, T corner, a regular corner, which is like the L shape, and then there is the straight version. So you'll need models for all those. Luckily, I have the exact models for Blockbench, which are going to be required for the same rotation. So each type of rotation, like for this one, you're going to need to set up your fence post in the same rotation as that. So if you want to change all the different pieces and stuff like that, you can do that, but it needs to be on this side of the corner. So keep in mind that any of the rotations like this for the entire model needs to be the same when you design it. It cannot be something that is basically facing the other direction like that over onto the other side. So it can't be on this side, or it can't be on this corner or anything like that. It needs to be exactly the same way it's set up here. Reason being, it's dependent on the rotation of the model. So if you start modeling it a different way, it's going to not work. So make sure that you model it according to the actual template for Blockbench that I've provided here, or you're just going to have a really bad time and it's going to be confusing and you're going to be screaming that it doesn't work and stuff like that when it's just down to your modeling for your fence posts. So make sure that you use those as a guideline. They're in the workspace files. So when you go to get the procedures for this project, they're also in the assets folder. So it's like the assets, models, and then Blockbench. So you can use those as a template. All right. With that being said, though, we need to actually create 6 blocks one for each one of those particular models. And we'll start with the very basic one, which is our fence post. So what we need to do is set up the model itself. After you import your model, it should come up in the JSON format. Now, in order to import a model, you need to go to 3D and then click the JSON part and then import your JSON file for your model. One of the things that people constantly ask why things are not working is because people start modeling in different random workspaces. So when you create a new workspace, like if we were to go into Blockbench right now, and it'll give us some different options for different models. Now, people might be inclined to just use a generic model or Bedrock model or anything like that. Those won't work. You need to go with a Java block/item one, and then click the new one, and then it will be that particular workspace for JSON file. It will not give you the option to export to the block for JSON if you do not have this particular workspace. So just keep that in mind when you're actually modeling. With the other thing is with the texture, you'll need that, just a texture for your model. If you have a different model, it might be more complex, but we're just using the same texture all the way through all of our models. So that's basically what I've assigned here. You want to make sure that your hitbox or your transparency type is set to cutout, and that it's a transparent block. If you're using waterlogging, then you will have to adapt the code a little bit. This generally doesn't have waterlogging support. I don't think it does. But if you wanted to add it, you would have to basically set up the check this to fluid texture, and then you would also need to enable waterloggable. So these two would be basically set up for the waterlogging features. You would still need it on cutout, and you need your block rotation set to south, west, northeast for player side. So make sure those are all set up that way. Bounding box, you'll need to make sure that it's not a solid cube. Again, if you wanted to actually check to see how the model is and all your shapes and stuff, what you're going to need to do is actually open it up with something like Notepad. We'll just open up the none one for the fence post, and it's going to tell you a couple things about your model itself. These from and to are your hitbox locations. So from is the minimum location, where to is the maximum location. So there will be multiple elements depending on what kind of thing that you have. So for example, if we go into the straight version, which is this one right here, it will have more pieces to it. So you'll have to basically set up all the to and from ones into your model. I've basically just added a quick overlay of a general location just for the example workspace. But if you want to make it actually be a good project, then you want to make sure you go through all the actual directions and set that up accordingly to your model itself, just so it's properly aligned. This will help with AI pathfinding and a few other things, so make sure that this is set up. For the fence post, what you want is to give this your fence name. This will be your main icon for your block placement and stuff like that, so you want to call it whatever represents your fence. So make sure this is the GUI name that you're actually naming for the physical item that you're going to be naming your fence itself when you're placing it and stuff like that. Wood type, you'll probably want to set this, or the material type, you'll probably want to set this to whatever, but it can be pretty much anything. Just make sure that the creative tab, it is under a creative tab that you can actually get to. and that it doesn't point to any other blocks. This is important because I'll cover that in a little bit. Outside of that, the light opacity needs to be set to 0. This makes it a transparent image, so it can basically let light through. That's how custom models work. All blocks for the fences need a tick rate of 1, and you might want to set your color on map to whatever you want. Now, all the fence pieces will need the AI path node type to be set to fence. This will basically allow entities to know that they cannot go through this block, and they will not attempt to try to hop over it. If you go with blocked, they will try to hop over it, but they see it as an obstacle, like a single block or whatever. Default will basically just have them think that they can walk through it, and that won't really work. Another option is open. This will basically act like an open door or open fence gate, so you want to have that for your open fence gate part. But generally your fences and your closed fence gate will need the property of fence. Outside of that, there isn't really anything else on this particular thing that you need to configure. If you want to add fire properties to it for being flammable, then you can set that if it's a wood fence or something. You will need a tile entity for this. We do use some MBT for this in some of the particular procedures for double fences, so it's just easier to enable this so it's consistent all the way through. Fluid and forage energy doesn't require it. And then we have our triggers. So this is our base system that we have for our triggers. We need fence block added. This is added to the fence block when block added, when block destroyed by explosion, when block destroyed by player, and then the update tick. So this procedure is consistent through all 4 of these, all the way through all of our properties themselves. Now, if you want to add double fence support, you will need to go into your fence post one and add the procedure for fence when block placed by. This will basically only be run when the player is placed by places the block instead, and then it will basically run a script. So right now it's not doing anything because we don't have it linked up, but we'll cover that in a little bit. So this main procedure, we'll cover that in just a second, but again, all those other blocks, like the straight one and stuff like that, same thing. Only difference is the hitbox, and we're pointing to no creative inventory. And then we're also pointing the drop and the create a pick item to our fence post. So we need to make sure that these are all set up that way. You can pretty much configure anything else out that you need, but they do need a tick rate of 1 because we're using that. And all the same other conditions basically apply, as well as the procedure. So again, all your blocks for your fence will require this one procedure for your update tick, block added, and when the block is destroyed by either a player or explosion. So with the player, the added block, this basically is set up so you only need to configure 2 things. The only thing that you need, well, a few things. You need to point to your main procedure for all 4 of these or 5 of these run call procedure blocks. Basically what that will do is it'll run the script in for each rotation type. And then we have just the tags that we need to basically call it to. So this one is the group tag. So basically this is going to group our fence gates and our fences together. So we need to make sure that these are pointed to the right tag. It's currently under the Forge namespace. You can put it under your mod namespace or under Minecraft namespace. Doesn't matter how you set it up. But the Forge tag is where I've configured it for this tutorial, and then the tag name. So basically this one is called custom fence or fence. And then we have one for the gates, which is just the 2 gate blocks. And basically what this does is it has the Forge tag again, and then it's under custom gates for the name tag. The important part is it's testing if it's not a gate block, and then it's going to run this script. If this part is not included and this tag doesn't exist in here, what's going to happen is it's going to be acted similar to a regular fence block, and it's going to try updating it to a part that will actually fit the rotation and everything like that. So that would be a very bad time when you're actually trying to set up a gate to actually go through the fence. So make sure that you have these parts all set up that way. And that you basically link this to your main procedure for your fence script. And that is basically run from the main procedure, which calls several other procedures. These are subscripts for the directions. Basically, the only thing that you need to do is link up the 6 individual scripts for that. You have your fence post one, your end script for that, straight script, corner script, which is the L-shaped one, junction, which is the T-shaped script, and then your fence cross, which is the plus sign kind of shape script. So if we go into the fence post one, this is the easiest one to example. The only thing that you need to set up is the actual model or block that you have set up. So this is the actual post itself, and then you need to point to the fence group. So basically the group tag, which is consists of the actual 2 fence gates and all the fence blocks. So what it's doing from there is it's going to just run the script. You don't need to really worry about that too much. It's just going to do its own thing. The only thing that you need to configure is these 2 parts up here in all of those other procedures as well. This is the end one. Only 2 things that you need to worry about is the end block and your tag for your actual thing. Straight, again, same thing. All of those are consistent all the way up to the player places. Now we'll cover that one in a little bit, but we're going to move on to the fence gate after we do the 2 tags. So the first one is custom fence. This is the forge tag. It's a block tag, and this is the tag name that we gave it. And this has all of our actual fences in it up to the fence gates. So all of our fence components are into this one tag. The other one is just called fences, and this is under our mod namespace. And then what we have is the tag name. So this is what we've called it. We called it fences, and it's under a block category. And this just has our fences in it. So all our different fence models, all 6 of them. So that's the only thing here. And then under gates, we only have 2 blocks. So block closed, which basically same idea as the other ones. It's just like a fence. It's just a little bit different. The closed one is going to be your main placing one. So you want to not point to an item for it to drop, and you don't want a creative pick item. So it's going to inherit whatever it drops itself. You want to put that under a creative inventory, and the tick rate should be 1, and you should have the AI pathfinding for the closed version set to fence. If it's a regular block, then what you want to do is have it set to open for the open version, and that will allow entities to walk through. But because this is a closed fence gate, what we want to do is make sure that it is set to fence. So that's pretty much all the things. You will need tile entity, I think, possibly. The only procedure for this is a right-click procedure. And basically what this does is it will test for the the closed block. If it's closed, it will open it. So you need to set your closed version here of your block for your fence gate, and your open one, and then your open one, and then your closed one. Once you've done that, you can just save, and it will basically work as intended. Make sure to link that up to your other model as well. So the other one is your open one. And again, all the same properties, only difference is we're pointing to the closed version for the fence gate, and we don't have it under creative inventory, and we're selecting the closed version of the item for the creative pick item. Everything else is the same, so we can just basically inherit the setup. Now, all these particular models require the same rotation, south, west, north, and east rotation, so make sure those are all set up. If you're using waterlogging, you will also need to waterlog these 2 blocks here for it to work. So make sure that those are set up if you're using waterlogging properties. So outside of that, the only other thing that I should mention is fences do use a fence tag, which is called custom fence gate. So this is used in one of the procedures when block added for the fence gate, and this is just targeting the two fence blocks themselves. It's under the Forge namespace, and it's a block tag. All right, so that's the complex part, and we'll move on to how to add double fences now. So in your fences particular blocks, what you want to go to is your fence post, and then what you want to do is go to triggers and set up when block is placed by, and then you want to basically add this procedure to the main block. Now what this will do is it will basically test if it's replace the block with our fence post if there is either water or air above the block. So basically if there's air or water above the block that we're replacing, when the player places it, it's going to add a fence post above. So what it's going to do after that is it's going to make sure that the fence above has a tag is top. So basically what that means is it's going to basically say, hey, I'm the top of the block, and then that will help with the breaking properties, which we'll cover right now. So once you've done that, save your procedure, and then what we can do is go and create a global procedure. And I've already created one. It's called a block is broken, and then we can just drag this on here. And then what we want to do is put our custom namespace in. This is where our other tag is, where just our fences are taken into consideration, our fence blocks, and this is the fence tag that we use. Now again, this is just taking the fences into consideration, not the fence gates. So what it does is it basically just tests if the block above is either a fence, like a fence gate, or not fence gate, a fence block, and if it has the tag is top. If it doesn't have the top, then it will try testing if there is one where it currently is, if it is the top block, and if it isn't, then it's not going to break any blocks. It's just going to break the just taking consideration when it's going to break it, so it's not going to try breaking 2 blocks instead. The reason why we're basically removing the block first is because we don't want it to actually drop the material itself, where we want the bottom block to actually drop the actual item for replacing the fence. Now the reason why we do that is because you would be able to duplicate the actual item over and over again if we didn't just remove the top version. So this is where this script comes in that MBT variable. But other than that, you don't need to worry about this part. All you need to worry about is setting up the tag namespace, and you're good to go. Make sure this is linked up to that block, and it's a global procedure for this one. Now once you've done that, we can go back into game and we'll just quickly test how it works. Alright, so we're back in game, and we're just going to place down a single block, and as you can see, it places a top block above it. If we break the top block, it will drop a post, just one post. If we break the bottom one, then it'll just drop a post as well. We can act like a regular fence, like as intended for the thing. So this basically acts like a double fence. You can still break that one, and it will take in consideration the block. Now if there's another one on top of it, it'll only break the one that's intended. So that's basically how that works. So we can actually break certain ones, and it will design it to break the ones that we want. So that's basically how that script works. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. The workspace will be on GitHub, so you guys can download the procedures, the models, and all that other stuff that is required for this project. Outside of that, thanks for watching. Peace out.